Thank you very much for joining. My name is Darren Joseph from HJ.Tax. We're a team that seeks to demystify the sometimes confusing world of cross-border taxation. And today we have the honor and privilege of joining us, Claudia Vasconcelos. Please introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, Darren, first of all, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to discuss and explain the advantages of investing and living in Madeira. This is a topic that is very dear to me. I'm born and raised on the islands. I am currently head of business development of NewCo. We are a one-stop shop for investors and expatriates in Portugal. We're headquartered in Madeira. And most of my career has been dedicated and devoted to the attraction of foreign investments to Portugal, specifically to Madeira, or mostly in particular to Madeira. I've actually worked for about 18 years in the entity that is still today the government entity in charge of promoting the International Business Center of Madeira. And for the past 10 years, I joined NewCo, and we are actively promoting and assisting investors and expats relocating in Portugal, and particularly in Madeira.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Can you give an indication as to the special tax rates available?
Yes,
for those who, yeah.
Of course. So the current regime that we have, this is just to explain that the regimes are negotiated and approved, and we are currently under the fourth regime. The fourth regime is approved for companies authorized until the end of this year, 2023, with benefits up to 2027. And it grants very special tax incentives. A corporate income tax rate of 5%, which I believe in terms of nominal rate is the lowest within the European Union. Yeah. Reductions in other taxes that apply in Portugal to Portuguese companies, autonomous tax, stamp duty, for instance, and exemptions for the shareholders. So there is no withholding tax on the distribution of dividends to non-resident shareholders. There is no withholding tax on the payment of services, interest, royalties to third parties and non-resident shareholders. There's also exemption on capital gains on the sale of the Madeira company. So it's a set of benefits that is implemented with the objective to attract investors, giving them special tax benefits, but also giving the company the goal to grow, the capacity to grow with a minimum tax impact. One important consideration is that these tax rates, these reduced tax rates, and in particular the 5% corporate income tax rates, only applies to activities that are services, let's say, to the activities of the company that are undertaken with non-residents in Portugal. It is not forbidden. So the company can, imagine we have a technology company providing services to customers in Portugal, in Madeira, or in mainland Portugal, and customers in international countries. We have to separate the accounting of both activities, and the activity that the profits generated from the activities with non-residents will be taxed at 5%. And again, it's a nominal rate. So we submit the tax returns, and instead of paying the standard corporate income tax rate in Portugal, which is 21%, or in this case in Madeira, which is 14.7%, that part is taxed at 5%. The other activity, which the services provided to local entities or main companies in Portugal, will be taxed in this case at 14.7%, which is the standard corporate income tax rate in Madeira.
Okay, this is fantastic. So, I mean, because this is an extraordinary low rate. I think as I hear it and I understand it, it does remind me of the free zone regime in the UAE, in the United Arab Emirates. But of course, the advantage of this is that, of course, Madeira/Portugal is not on anybody's grey list, blacklist, non-cooperative jurisdiction. Yes. It's within the EU, and so it's in the mainstream system rather than somewhat on the periphery. But of course, there are limitations, right? So there are only certain, of course, economic substance is required. You need to have boots on the ground. You need to have a certain number of employees, so no shell companies. Could you talk a bit about the number of employees, as well as perhaps the industries that are not allowed? For example, I understand financial services,
Financial services. So there's a limitation. Exactly, you are absolutely right in terms of the activities. Financial services, insurance companies. So everything that is regulated from a financial. Everything that requires a financial license is not allowed. There's a specific list of activities that can be authorized by the regional government to benefit from this special tax regime, and it's mostly related to services or industrial activities. I failed to add, but in the case of industrial activities, and in particular, as you've mentioned, the free trade zone, if there's manufacturing involved, in that case, the tax incentive is higher because there is a reduction of 50% on the corporate income tax. So the income will be taxed at 2.5.
2.5.
Yes.
Wow. So, that's amazing.
Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah. And also, Darren, in that case, if the shareholders, remember I mentioned that the tax benefits for the shareholders apply to non-residents, but in the case of the industrial park, and that's this case, the companies must physically be in it's a fenced area, and industrial customs and tax for customs and tax purposes. But in that case, even if the shareholder is resident in Portugal, there will be exemption. So no personal income tax, no capital gains on the tax, no corporate income tax if the shareholder is a company. So, but imagine, Darren, how important and difficult to attract an industrial company or manufacturer to this, again, small remote island. It is that we have to grant a high level of benefits to be able to compete with other regions that have.
And with that in mind, would the employees also enjoy reduced personal income taxes?
No. There's only, unfortunately, standard personal income taxes, except those that are in the shipping industry. So in the case of shipping, it's different. The benefits are additionally applied to the crew members. They are exempt from personal income tax. That's the only situation. In the other cases, for Madeira employees, the fact that we are able to work in an international environment, working globally, and for companies that usually are also apply good incentives and good salaries, above average salaries. That's the standards. You have to consider that the standard, the minimum wage in Madeira is currently 786 euros. So it's quite low compared to other EU countries. And usually foreign investors tend to adjust the salary. So this is already a good benefit for us. One thing that you mentioned was the requirements, and it's very important. So these benefits come with an obligation. So, and this an obligation of substance, but a substance that is determined in law. The company, to be able to benefit from the special tax regime, the company must employ at least one employee. It must be an employee resident working in Madeira, can be a foreign, an expat, for instance. There's no limitation in terms of nationality, but there is in terms of residence. So it must be tax resident in Madeira. I didn't mention this, but the same for shareholders. There's no restriction on the nationality. Some clients ask that of the shareholders. There's only a difference in the tax treatment in case they are residents in Portugal. One employee with one employee.
To that point, what if they're resident in Portugal? How would the dividends?
28%.
28%.
So it's the standard. The standard rate, 28%, unless it's a corporate shareholder, and we can apply the elimination of double taxation. And in that case, there will be no tax on the distribution of dividends to the shareholder, to the corporate shareholder, and then. But as individuals, it will be taxed at 28%.
Okay, understood.
The tax benefits increase progressively as the number of employee increases. So there are thresholds to the taxable income that can benefit from the reduced corporate income tax. To give you an idea, one employee grants you the 5% of up to a maximum of 2.8 million euros. A year. And then it gradually grows. So 2 employees, 2.8 million, and then 5 employees will grant you 3.55 million, and up to a maximum of 100 employees. So the more employees you have, the higher the taxable income that gets the benefit. Additionally, if the company has less than 6 employees, so 5 or less, it's also compulsory to make an investment in fixed, tangible or intangible assets. These are the 2 main criteria. The employees must be employed within 6 months after the company starts activity, and the investment must be made within 2 years after the start of the activity. So in fact, Darren, as we all know it today, companies are advised to create substance. In the case of Madeira, the law already requires it. One advantage, if I may add, is that in Madeira, we may argue, but I believe that it is quite advantageous to create that level, the level of substance, unless we are talking about a company with a certain dimension and size. If, for instance, it's not easy to employ 100 employees with a certain profile, I would say. But if you're considering 5, 10, 15 employees, depending on the sector, the salaries, as I've mentioned, are quite competitive. The living costs are lower than in mainland Portugal and certainly in other EU countries. So people are willing to come to Madeira or to stay in Madeira, especially if we are given the opportunity to work in an interesting and appealing project. So I would say substance is not difficult to meet in terms of employment, depending, of course, on the nature of the activity and the skills that are required for the company.
Okay, fantastic.
So if you're a 6, 7, or 8-figure investor, entrepreneur, or business owner who needs a tailor-made solution from a qualified team of professionals, we can help you achieve the international lifestyle, the freedom, and even the tax savings you're looking for. Visit us at htj.tax and live that international life.